Welcome to this morning's LinkedIn Live. I'm delighted to have with me today Alan Boyce. And the reason that Alan is joining us is he is the coordinator and author of Pitch One to One's research report that came out last month called Get Connected on LinkedIn. Alan will be able to share with us what we tested, what the approach was, any surprising results that we expected. And you can really ask him loads of questions. You can dig into, make them as difficult as possible for Alan, if you will, on what our methodology was, just so that when you're reading the report, there's the link in the comments, you can know that it was done. And a word that we got really used to when we were doing the testing was statistically significant, wasn't it, Alan? So it came about, the research report, in November. We've always doing tests at Pitch One to One, and I had a conversation with John Asperian, who kindly joined me for a LinkedIn Live a few weeks ago, and I said to him, we've got a few ideas for the research that we want to really bring out as a report. What are people asking you at the moment? And John kindly shared a couple of things, and one of them was, now that LinkedIn is reducing the number of notes you can add to your connection request for free users, people are always asking us, do I really need to add a note or not? So from that point in November, I took this idea to you, Alan, didn't I? And tell me, what did you think?
Yeah, I thought it was a really interesting idea, because there's been so many changes to what the differences between free users and paying users are. The number of notes you can send with connection requests being one of them, also shortening the connection requests that you can send. That it did seem, is there a two-tier, or more than two-tier system being created? And how much does that really affect your ability to network effectively if you're not a paying user? So we wanted to look into that, and to some of the other things around really what does work in terms of getting new connections on LinkedIn. You hear so much advice, don't you? There's so much conventional wisdom about what best practice is, but you rarely see much data on this. People will talk about their own experiences or what they've done for their clients, but of course these are very narrow samples. So we really wanted to put some of these hypotheses to a more rigorous test, and see if they stood up.
Yeah.
So we sat down, came up with some ideas that we could put to the test, and thought, okay, where are we going to get the data? Well, as Pitch One to One manages loads of clients' profiles, we had a lot of data of our own that we could refer to. We partnered with others to get hold of third-party data at scale as well. And then one of our marketing team came up with the excellent idea of putting out a load of polls to see what people say they do, and see if there is any gap between what they say they do and what they actually do in practice when they're receiving the connection requests. So 3 sources of inspiration, really, and we worked on it in the first quarter of the year, getting all the data, and then put the report together in the second quarter.
And
you put it out in July.
And the testing goes on as well, doesn't it? I think one thing that happened in March was the polls inspired us, because that was, although we had some comments on the polls, we got the data, not just on what people think they should do when they send a connection request, but how they feel when they're receiving a connection request as well. And that really brought us to the idea of, there are lots of LinkedIn experts, and we really want to hear what they say in response to those poll questions as well. So in the report, there are also lots of sort of vox pop videos of people who really know their LinkedIn stuff, which really, I think it brings the report to life, doesn't it?
Yeah, there was, thank you so much to all the people who took part in the vox pop videos that you and Jack put together at Uplift Live earlier this year. I think it really does add a lot of context and a lot of character to the numbers. And I found a lot of what they had to say really interesting, and it's just great to get so many different perspectives and sets of insights on what the data could mean.
Yeah, absolutely. I know Mick Adam here, he's just saying good morning from Belgium. He was one of the contributors, so thank you for that, Mick. If anybody hasn't heard about Uplift Live, just a little plug here. It is my favorite conference of the entire year because it's UK's only LinkedIn conference. If you haven't heard about it, I know the ticket prices are an absolute bargain at the moment, and there's a link to it in the comments of this event. Excuse that plug there, Alan, but I thought it felt like a moment to do that.
And of course, you are a confirmed speaker for Uplift 2026.
I am. That's not why I love it. I loved it last year and the previous year. But I'm very excited to be on stage next year. And actually talking about the next stage of the research as well, which is really exciting. And as we just get towards the end of this LinkedIn Live, we're going to talk about the things that you'll be testing next. And what I'd love is anybody watching this LinkedIn Live, put in the comments what you would like to be tested, because that is inspiration. And you never know, you might just get the answer in the next report. So, Alan, what was your methodology? This is the bit where please ask Alan any questions if you want to scrutinize the way that we went about this. I think you were pretty scientific, though, weren't you?
We tried to be. Obviously, it's a challenge. Every single person that you send a connection request to is an individual human being with their own motivations and preferences and needs and issues. So you've got to, if you want to extract lessons that can be generally applied, you've got to use big samples in order to, I guess, iron out all the individual differences. We wanted to use as many different profiles as possible and as many and sample across as many different connection requests as we could within the timings that we'd allowed ourselves. We wanted to minimize the differences between our sample groups, between our test group and our control groups. So we would do a literal A/B test, which is very easy on a website, for example, because you can just run two different pages at the same time and serve them to different percentages of people who come in. Slightly harder with something like LinkedIn requests, where you get to send one to one person. And if you're testing, say, a variable on somebody's profile page, well, you can't run two of those. You can't do two of those simultaneously at all. If you're going to do that test at the same time, you've got to use two different profiles. And that, of course, throws up the biggest problem of all, which is minimizing the differences between your test groups, making sure that as far as possible, you've got people from the same geographies, with similar job titles, all from within the same ideal customer profile. Minimizing the differences as much as possible. You'll never do all of it. Some people will just work better at different times of day, I guess, and you'll never know that. The bigger the sample, the more you can flatten out those sorts of risks of your data being skewed. But it's never going to be exact. But we tried to be as scientific as possible, and I wrote a long methods statement at the end of the report, which I'm sure only the most daring of viewers have actually ploughed through to say what we did to get the results that we did. And I'm sure that by being as open and transparent and aspiring to objectivity as much as possible with our testing methodology, some of our results may have been less eye-catching than they otherwise would have been. You often see these claims that, oh, this is how I got 80% connection rate and things like that. And when you deconstruct it, you can see that there's a lot of sleight of hand or self-selection of the results going on there. Our numbers were not earth-shattering, but I hope that they are valid and that people can draw strong inferences from them. As you say, we aimed for statistical significance where possible, to the degree where I got a little bit hung up on the maths around it all, and realized, oh, wait a minute, ultimately 90%, 89% certainty is still pretty good. But all those tolerances and all those rules that we followed are there in the method statement. And if that's your bag, then read it.
I always thought that when we were testing, like the first premise is, does a note matter or not? And then it sort of unpeeled, like it's like an onion, isn't it? Because there are so many things that can affect your connection acceptance rate. There's all of the profile, there's what you've done before, what you've done afterwards, what, mutual connections, all of that sort of thing, that it actually, I think that Nigel mentioned on the LinkedIn Live that I did with him about it. He said it's sort of nuanced because it feels quite narrow, but it's not. It's actually pretty huge and quite broad. And I think that that's probably one of the challenges that you had, is there's so many things that you can test in relation to this topic. And that's why I think that continuing with version 2, and will it be another topic for our research report in 2026? Possibly not, because if you don't get connected, people don't see your post, you don't have any ongoing conversations. And, there were so many things that you can be looking at. Now, I always thought that add a note or not, it would end up being, it depends. And I think that the testing that you did really proved that it did depend. And rather than sort of going through all of the results, were there any of the results that came through that I either didn't make it into the report or were quite surprising, or were you disappointed by anything that came out of the results?
Well, there was one test that we were very excited about doing, which was a complete failure because I gave out inconsistent instructions on how to deploy it. We wanted to see what difference it would make if you followed somebody before sending them a connection request. The theory being we'd create a bit of visibility or possibly an algorithmic effect that would enhance your visibility. In fact, what I found, because we set it up wrong, was that there was a massive preference in favor of not following first. The results were completely, just went horribly wrong and were so counterintuitive. I think the 16% difference between in percentage point difference in results between not following first and following first. It was just, this is so counterintuitive. What on earth is going on? And that's where we found that the results were sort of messed up by the way we'd collected them.
Right.
So you can't just follow the data blindly, I guess, is the lesson. Had we done so, we wouldn't have spotted that mistake. We had to follow our instincts to a degree and say, no, wait a minute, conventional wisdom probably is right here. So why are we getting these results? And they were just, my mistake.
Yeah.
Another factor is, I kind of wish we'd finished the tests 2 weeks earlier, because the two of the tests that we ran, one where we tested having in the headline field somebody's job title in their company versus a longer descriptive headline, and another test where we sent a fully tailored connection message where we researched the person and what connections they may have in common, aspects of their posting and their background that we could mention in that request, versus something more generic. In both of those cases, the test group's results were way better after 2 weeks than at the end of the tests. The more generic approaches had closed the gap considerably. They were still out in front, don't get me wrong. They were still significantly better performing, as you can see in the report. But it would have been a much better story if those gaps had been even wider as they were after 2 weeks. And I wonder if that is down to how people use LinkedIn, and it's maybe something we could look into another time. They respond to the heavily tailored personal stuff where they see a connection early, but then maybe they sweep round and follow up on other things after a month, say.
Yeah, that's a really interesting theory. And I do think that a lot of the time I'm always putting some kind of pop psychology into why somebody might be doing this. But actually what sits behind it is like, that's what the data says. And we, trying to second guess why that happens, I think is really interesting. But it's thinking about that makes us think about the next tests to do as well, doesn't it? It's those sorts of theories, and I know that they're stacking up the things that we want to test, and so so you've got another big job on your hands as well. And I like, please keep them coming, because Alan will pick the ones that he thinks will have the biggest impact overall. But what do you really want to dig into next, Alan?
So the topics that we've got a list already, and like you say, Laura, if any of the people listening have got suggestions or questions, please add them in. One thing we want to test is very much this one actually that John Espirian suggested in his LinkedIn Live with you was, does being verified, having your profile verified, make any difference? We'd also like to test what kind of a difference, if any, having the premium button, the premium badge rather, on your page makes. Whether it sends a signal to users, whether it sends a signal to the algorithm for visibility purposes. We'd like to look at more deeper into that whole question of how much difference does it make the more you engage with pay to LinkedIn. There's a big area, because it's something that we do at Pitch 1-to-1 for our clients, that we'd like to look at is how much of a difference posting regularly might make, and commenting as well. Does being an active contributor to the conversation on LinkedIn have a discernible effect on people's, probably, let's say, strangers' willingness to connect with you? We are assuming that it does, but we'd like to see how much and what sort of criteria and qualifications we might have around that. I'd like to do the follow first test properly as well. All looking at around how much, again, it's about pre-nurturing, I guess, pre-nurturing of those people that you want to make a connection with.
Or viewing the profile as well, just to add another one in.
All those sorts of pre-actionable soft touch points, as we've seen before you pop the question, as I was saying, will you connect with me? A big feature in the report also was our approach to account-based marketing, where we're cross-connecting groups of people from our client customers into multiple people from the target organizations that they want to connect with. And the order that we do that in and the breadth of people that we connect in with is one that we really like to look at. A big area that we've sort of relied on for years now is the insight that, in general, you'll get much better connection rates when connecting with your second degree network rather than your third degree network. In fact, all of the tests that we ran connected only with second degree connections of the profiles that we were using.
Right.
We'd like to see if that still holds up. and throw out some third degree connection requests, see if having no connections in common does make a difference. Interestingly, one of the perverse results that we got from our testing was that mentioning mutual connections in a generic way, just saying, I see we have mutual connections, or words to that effect in your connection request, actually led to a worse connection rate than saying nothing at all.
Yeah.
Which I guess is perhaps indicative of people's wariness of fake personalization or fake intimacy. And the sense that, you know, there's an ulterior motive there.
Exactly. It can sound a bit contrived, can't it? But
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to, because we've got quite a bit of data showing that the mutual connections, whether they're your colleagues or the colleagues of the people that you're trying to connect with, does make an impact overall. So it'd be really good to dig down into that one.
Yeah. I think the third degree connections is a really interesting one to go at, because there's the huge underwater iceberg of LinkedIn's user base is what Tracy Bedwell called, perhaps a little unfairly, she called them lurkers. That is people who are on LinkedIn but are not actively engaging in the conversations that are taking place in posts, in comments, threads, etc., who are not doing proactive outreach. But I think it's probably fair to say most of the C-suite people that you want to connect with typically fall into those groups. So how do you crack that nut? How do you get into the people you want to talk to who are not using LinkedIn regularly but nevertheless have profiles on there? Bless you. and so that's I just thought of that, to be honest. That's an area to add to the list.
Do you know what? I just thought of one earlier, and I thought, I'll just throw Alan by having a new idea. You did actually inspire it by saying that if you pay LinkedIn, is there an algorithmic, I don't know how you're going to test this, so I'm really throwing in a bit of a curveball here, but is there an algorithmic effect on, are they really arriving in date order, in recency, or are they putting paid members higher in that inbox?
I think the whole question of how paid members, free members, and Sales Navigator users are treated, the difference of newsfeed and inbox experience that they receive, is a fascinating topic. I would have to sit and think hard about how we might explore that, but I strongly suspect, because I'm trying to be scientific here, strongly suspect that there is a difference. How we would elicit what it might be, I'm very open to anybody's suggestions.
Yeah. Well, John has just backed up his, that he does get asked a lot about the verification. So that definitely is solidly on the list there, John. And Mick is saying that following first and engaging should be a standard before connecting anyway. I think we're also of the same thinking, Mick, but be really good to have the data to prove that we're right on that.
That's it. I mean, we do that as standard. You'll be pleased to hear, Mick, but we've never really measured the impact that it makes in an objective way. And I'd really love to have the data, accurate data, that would enable us to say, this is what you should do, and here is quantitative evidence as to why you should do it. So absolutely. Yeah, we will be doing that one.
It helps when you're talking to cynical salespeople, I find, as well. So John's got an interesting one here. Have you ever done any tracking with UTM parameters to work out how many people click the featured link button on premium profiles? Now, it's slightly adjacent to the getting connected, but obviously it's such an important one. I think we've been using Switchy, which is slightly better than UTM's, because I think there's always that drop off when they're going, you're leaving LinkedIn, are you sure? And then they never actually land on your website. And so I think we probably maybe not part of the Get Connected report, and sorry to add to your to-do list, Alan, but I know Ursula's on the call here, and she's a keen Switchy user, and she's been talking about, you know, links that are being clicked and so on. So there's one for you there as well, Ursula, to be testing. If anything comes through, Mick said that he would love to contribute to the research. Amazing. Thank
Brilliant.
you, Mick.
I'll be in touch, Mick. Thank you.
Brilliant. Alan, we've been chatting for 26 minutes now, so we're going to close up. But I would like to say that when I read the report for the first time, and then seeing it come alive on the website with all of the videos, you're such an amazing author. So thank you for making these tests so scientific, but then also bringing the creativity of storytelling to the report as well.
Well, thank you. I can really only take credit for the text. Our marketing team really brought it to life with the imagery, with the videos, with all the other visual stuff that is absolutely not my forte. So very much a team effort, and I will accept your thanks and congratulations on behalf of the entire team. But thank you. It was fun to do, and I'm looking forward to doing a second bite of the cherry in the second half of the year.
Wonderful. We're going to end the stream right there. See you later.